Families in Gaza City mourned their loved ones on Saturday. According to the Civil Emergency Service in Gaza, at least 7 Palestinians were killed and 30 wounded after an Israeli strike on a former school. They say it was sheltering displaced people in Gaza City. A spokesperson for the Israeli military said it was looking into the report. Earlier on Saturday, the Israeli military said it had targeted Hamas militants who were operating within a school compound in Gaza City and that it had taken measures to reduce harm to civilians. According to medics, the dead include a woman and her baby. It was unclear whether the other fatalities were Hamas fighters. The Palestinian Islamist group denies embedding fighters among civilians in Gaza. The war began when Hamas stormed into Israel on October the 7th, 2023, killing 1,200 people and taking more than 250 hostages back to Gaza, according to Israeli authorities. Israel then launched an air, sea and land offensive that's killed at least 44,000 people, according to authorities in the Hamas-run Gaza Strip. It's displaced nearly the entire population and left much of the enclave in ruins.
The impeachment of South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol is now under review by the country's constitutional court. That began Monday, only days after the opposition-controlled parliament impeached Yoon over his short-lived declaration of martial law on December 3rd. His actions plunged the U.S. ally into its gravest political crisis in decades. A spokesperson for the court said the first hearing will be held on December 27th. The court has 6 months to decide whether to remove Yoon from office or to reinstate him. Under South Korea's constitution, 6 justices must agree in order to oust an impeached president. The 9-member court has 3 vacancies, so the current justices would have to vote unanimously to remove Yoon. In South Korea's only previous presidential removal by impeachment, the court took 3 months to oust Park Geun-hye in 2017. Meanwhile, investigators from the Police, Defense Ministry and an anti-corruption agency also plan to question Yoon this week. On Sunday, Yoon did not appear at a summons for questioning in a separate investigation by the prosecutor's office. After Saturday's impeachment, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo stepped in as the country's acting president, and the leader of Yoon's ruling party, Han Dong-un, announced his resignation Monday. He has publicly backed impeaching Yoon and clashed with some members who opposed the move.
Students returned to classrooms in Syria on Sunday after the country's new rulers ordered schools to be reopened. It's a potent sign of some normalcy a week after rebels swept into the capital in the dramatic overthrow of President Bashar al-Assad. At this boys' high school in the capital Damascus, students cheered and clapped as the flag adopted by the new authorities was raised. The school's secretary said it was fully equipped, having spent the past few days preparing to welcome the children back again. While this Arabic teacher spoke of a young student's big hopes and ambitions, which can now be nurtured as they return to classrooms. Officials said most schools around the country were opening on Sunday. That's the first day of the working week in most Arab countries, though some parents didn't send their children to class, worried about the uncertainty over the situation. This student said he was optimistic and very happy. "I used to walk in the streets scared that I would get drafted to military service," he said. Syria's de facto new leader, Ahmad al-Shara, faces a huge challenge to rebuild the country following 13 years of civil war. Global and regional powers are still working out a new stance on the country a week after Shara's group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, toppled the Iran and Russia-backed Assad government. HTS is designated a terrorist organization by many governments. On Saturday, top diplomats from the United States, Turkey, the European Union and Arab nations met in Jordan to discuss the issue. The group agreed on a joint statement calling for a representative government that respects minority rights. It also affirmed support for Syria's territorial integrity and sovereignty. That comment appeared to be aimed at Israel, which has moved into Syria beyond a previously agreed buffer zone since Assad fell. As South Korea's acting president Han Duck-soo moved on Sunday to reassure the country's allies and calm financial markets, conservative supporters were praying for his impeached boss, Yoon Suk-yeol. Among them was 33-year-old Moon Ga-yeon, who was also rallying for Yoon the day before, as lawmakers, including some from his own People Power Party, voted for his impeachment.
I feel hopeless. 204 votes? That means the ruling party lawmakers also decided to impeach him, even though I'm not sure how many lawmakers sided for this. How can we even be a country? I can't distinguish between the ruling party and the opposition party. I can't hold back my anger at this moment.
Moon says she believes the opposition lawmakers support North Korea. She's afraid communism will spread in the south and take away her country's religious freedoms. That's why Moon says she and her church fully support Yoon.
I believe that martial law should have been declared earlier, and if martial law were indeed instated, we would be able to eliminate these North Korean followers.
Yoon shocked the nation on December the 3rd when he gave the military sweeping emergency powers to root out what he called anti-state forces. He rescinded the decree just hours later, but it triggered days of protest by thousands who demanded Yoon's exit. Yoon has been suspended from his presidential duties since Saturday's vote. He's also under criminal investigation over the martial law order, though Yonhap news agency reported on Sunday that he did not show up to a summons for questioning. Han, a longtime technocrat who was Yoon's prime minister, is now trying to undo the political crisis as acting president. On Sunday, he spoke with US President Joe Biden by phone, according to the White House and Han's office. In a statement from his office, Han said his country will, quote, carry out its foreign and security policies without disruption. While the main opposition Democratic Party announced it would not seek to impeach Han for his involvement in Yoon's martial law decision in a further attempt to stabilize the situation in Asia's fourth largest economy.
Video released on Sunday by the French gendarmerie showed the wreckage of hundreds of makeshift houses after the most powerful cyclone in nearly a century struck the archipelago of Mayotte in the Indian Ocean. A top local official told a local outlet that several hundred, maybe even thousands, may have been killed by Cyclone Chido. Asked about the death toll of several hundred, the French Interior Ministry said, quote, "It will be difficult to account for all victims," and said a figure could not be determined at this stage. Cyclone Chido swept through Mayotte overnight, according to the French Meteorological Administration. The forecaster said the storm brought winds of more than 124 miles per hour and damaged makeshift housing, government buildings, and a hospital, adding it was the strongest storm in more than 90 years to hit the islands. Mayotte's islands have been a focal point for illegal immigration from nearby Comoros. In recent decades, thousands have attempted to cross from Comoros on the east coast of Africa to Mayotte, which has a higher standard of living and access to the French welfare system. According to the French Interior Ministry, over 100,000 undocumented migrants live in Mayotte. Some 77% of the people in Mayotte live below the French poverty line. The cyclone went on to hit northern Mozambique on Sunday.
Russia's airbase in the Syrian port city of Latakia has become a hive of activity since the fall of President Bashar al-Assad. A cargo plane and helicopter were seen landing at the base, and at least one cargo plane flew out on Saturday for Libya, as Syrian security officials stationed outside the base said. While satellite footage from Friday shows what appeared to be at least two Antonov AN-124s at the base with their nose cones open, apparently preparing to load up. It comes as Russia is pulling back its military from the front lines in northern Syria after the fall of President Assad, Syrian officials told Reuters. Syrian military and security forces in contact with Russia told Reuters that there would be more departures in coming days as Moscow withdraws heavy equipment and senior Syrian officials. Russian forces will also pull back from posts in the Alawite Mountains, but will not leave its two main bases in the country, they said. Russia's bases in Syria are an integral part of its global military presence. The Tartus naval base is Russia's only Mediterranean repair and resupply hub, and the Latakia air base is a major staging post for military and mercenary activity in Africa. Reuters was unable to immediately ascertain how Syrian rebel leader Ahmad al-Shara, better known as Abu Muhammad al-Golani, saw the long-term future of the Russian bases. Russian President Vladimir Putin's 2015 intervention in the Syrian civil war helped prop up Assad when the West was calling for him to be toppled. Last Sunday, Putin granted Assad asylum in Russia after Moscow helped him to flee Damascus.
Israeli forces on Sunday patrolled inside a recently seized demilitarized zone along the border with Syria, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced plans to double the number of Israelis living in the part of the Golan Heights Israel captured from Syria in a 1967 war. Netanyahu's office said the government unanimously approved a more than $11 million plan to encourage demographic growth in the Golan. It said Netanyahu submitted the plan to the government, quote, in light of the war and the new front facing Syria, and out of a desire to double the population in the Golan. Israel sent its troops into a long-standing buffer zone earlier this month as Syrian rebels ousted the long-reigning President Bashar al-Assad. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Jordan have condemned the incursion. Israeli leaders said it was a temporary security measure in light of the instability in Syria. Amid the tumult in Syria, Israeli airstrikes targeted hundreds of military sites across the country. Syria's de facto leader Ahmed al-Shara said on Saturday that Israel was using false pretexts to justify its attacks on Syria. He also said he was not interested in engaging in new conflicts as his country focuses on rebuilding. Shara, better known as Abu Muhammad al-Golani, leads the Islamist Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, the group that swept Assad from power last Sunday, ending the family's 5-decade iron-fisted rule. Israel annexed captured parts of the Golan Heights in 1981. Syria has long rejected Israeli claims to the territory, but past efforts to reach a peace treaty failed. In 2019, then-President Donald Trump declared U.S. support for Israeli sovereignty over the Golan, but the annexation has not been recognized by most countries.